Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 2, and in this video we are to deliver our presentation about assessing speaking. So today, the first, I want to say thanks for Mr. Lintang give our group opportunity to make a video, and the second, let me introduce myself. My name is Winnie Nisha, and my partner Sylvia Ananda and Mira Mutmainah. So we are from 5 semester from class B regular morning. So today, before I'm going to our presentation, I want to ask you about what do you know about speaking? Yes, speaking is how we communication with other people to get interaction, communication, and how we get activity. So in this assessing speaking, we are have 10 point to inform to you. So the first, the nature of speaking. The nature of speaking, the way speaking is discussed, is applied in linguistics because of spoken language, speaking as interaction, and speaking as social and situation-based activity. All these perspectives see speaking as an integral part of people's daily lives, and this also they help assessment developer form a clear understanding of what it means to help be able to speak a language and then transfer this understanding to the decide to text and rating criteria. The question about assessing speaking, what is special about spoke language? What kind of language is used in spoken interaction, and what does imply for the decide of speaking assessment? So we are have important point. The first, the sound of speech. Okay, when people hear speak, they pay attention to what they speak sound, right? So possible subconscious judgment about the speaker personality, attitude, home region, and native or non-native speaker status. So the sound of speech is a thorny issue for language assessment, however, and first people tend to judge native or non-native speaker status on the basis of pronunciation and should be judged in the speech because standard justify it. And if it's not, how can an alternative standard be defined? The native speaker standard for foreign language pronunciation is questioned on two accounts. First, difficult to determine which single standard would suffice as the native speaker standard for any language, particularly so for widely used language. And second, our research into learner language has progressed. It has become clear that a vast number of languages made native like speech is met in criterion, most language learners will fail even if they are fully functional in normal communication situations. A focus on pronunciation is attractive because it can be judged against a norm, and even if the norm is not easy to define given the discussion above, a gross definition from it are easy to enough to notice. And the next about spoken grammar. In generally, learners are seen to project from knowing a few structure to knowing more and more, from using simple structure to using more complex ones, and from making many errors to making few, if only all. Learning grammar is hardly for judging frequency because it's easy to detect in speech and writing, and because the fully pledged grammar of most language are well known and viable for use as performance standard. But however, the grammar that is evaluated in assessing speaking should be specifically related to the grammar speech. Next, about written sentence, spoke idea units. A major difference with speech and writing is the speaker do not usually speak in sentence. Rather, speech can be considered to consist of idea units, which are short phrases and clauses connected with and, or, but, or that, or not joined by conjunction at all but simply spoken next to each other, with possibly a short pause between them. This because speakers are trying to communicate idea that listener working memory. The units are usually spoken with current intonation quarter, and they are often limited clauses with a verb phrase, a noun phrase, and a prepositional phrase, but some of them do not contain a verb, and sometimes an idea unit is started by one speaker to completed by another.
I will explain about grammar in plain and unplanned speech. There are, of course, some situations where complex grammatical features and high degree of written language influence are not only common but also expected and highly valued. Examples of this include speeches, lectures, conference presentation, and expert discussion where speakers represent their institution on their profession. This situation involves plain speech where the speakers have prepared and possibly rehearsed their presentation in advance, or they express well thought out points and opinions which they may have voiced many times before. Also, unplanned speech, in contrast, is spoken on the spur of the moment, often in reaction to other speakers. It's particularly in unplanned speech that short idea units and incomplete sentences are common, although even in planned speech, idea units are usually shorter than in writing, because the speakers know that their talk has to be understood by listeners in real time. Also, two examples to illustrate the nature of grammar in speech. Let the internal structure of idea units. Many spoken idea units are clauses, grammatical speaking, but the way that idea units are structured is often slightly different from standard written clauses. Two structures that clearly belong to spoken-like language use are topic, collation, and tales Topicalization or thematic fronting gives special informational emphasis to the initial element of a clauses in informal speech words spoken. Words many rating scales for speaking includes description of vocabulary use and at the highest levels they often talk about being able to express oneself precisely and providing evidence of the richness of one's lexicon. There is specific and generic words. Some form of writing language require the use of specific words to make it clear what is being told about. The speaker's words use many generic words, such as this one or that one, the wrong thing, move, put, fine, and good. The interaction giver and the chair use would probably exchange several turns to make sure that the task got done properly. Generic words are very common in spoken interaction. Even though they are not phrases, they are fully comprehensible in the speaking because they talk about people, things, or activities that can be seen or because they are familiar to the speakers. Another common feature of interactive and relatively informal talk is the use of vague words like ting tingy, tinyami, and what's it when the speaker cannot think of the word he or she needs to use fixed phrases. Fillers and hesitation markers. Speakers also need to know words, phrases, and strategies for creating times to speak. These are sometimes called fillers or hesitation markers, and they include expressions such as usually, kind of, sort of, and you know, as well as whole expression. Fixed conventional phrases are also used for other purpose in talk than creating time. Example of these include responses like I thought you had never asked or I'm doing all right. All things considered, the phrases either always have the same form or they constitute a formula where one or two slots can be filled by various terms so that the learner's use of lexical phrases is connected with a listener's express.
Speaking as a meaningful interaction. In a typical spoken interaction, two or more people talk to each other about things that they think are mutually interested and relevant in the situation. That can be to pass the time amongst each other, share opinions on get something done, or they can do several things that others think once. So the next is the openness of meanings in interactions. The openness of meanings is not only a confusion in a speech, it's also an effective confusion in a speech. They can avoid committing themselves to assessment or attempt to find out how the listener feels about the topic before proceeding. They can try to find out what the listener already knows, what he or she is prepared to accept or understand, and what the best strategy might to be pursued the listener to accept their point of view. So the next is variation with the spoken language use. Discuss three significant areas in a spoken discourse of assessing speaking and purpose of talk, the speaking situation, and speaking rules. They help assessments developers think about what kind of talk need to be included in their assessments. And the focus of the assessments is on the rank of constructs. So the next is talking to chat and talking to inform. That's Brown define chatting as the exchange and amicable conversational turns in with another speaker. The primary purpose is to make an augmented social contact to all the social wills, and to skating forms a large part of anyone's social lives. Skillful skating involves finding a fluid stream of topics that the speakers find sufficiently interesting to take up and which they can find a shared angle. So the next is talking in a different social situation. The speaking frameworks list the potential social and contextual factors influencing speech as first, situation, the physical setting, for instance, our classroom. So, and the nature of the event, for instance, in end of terms, styles of speaking. So, participant speakers, either audience or etc. For instance, is two exmenials, an introduction and an assessor. Whatever present in the situation or absent, only listening to the interaction afterwards from the tape. So the next is and conventional outcomes of the reference, if any. For instance, accomplishing whatever task is the goal of the event, or producing a text score and a verbal feedback. The ends also include the individual participant goals, such as exposing the strengths and the weakness of the examinee's speaking ability, knowing one's ability to speak a foreign language that there are unknown.
Okay, I think this is our video from group 2. Thank you so much for the attention and watching our video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.